Hi guys, happy Friday. So yes, I'm very sick still. Can't fucking talk that well, but whatever. So I've got to get up and act like I'm not sick. So, alright, found another interesting article, The Mythology of Venus, the Ancient Calendars, and the Archaeoastronomy, which is really, really cool and very interesting. So this is just, it's a preface to what we went over already. So the whole Venus study, a study of Venus. But this is even better though. So alright, now this is edited by Helen Benenji, and it was with a foreword by Morgan Llewellyn. And this is the University Press of America, 2013, themystica.com. Amazing. So right now, before being introduced to the wealth of details and facts that led to the overwhelming question of whether the archetype of the goddess of Venus began in the Paleolithic cave art and ritual buried deep in the consciousness of our humanity, I would ask the reader to examine the motives put before this writer to inspire me to the task of this meticulous research project. So what would make me pursue the project with an aim toward careful proof that such an archetype might be traced to the beginning of religious and sacred thought and still influence us today? So the answer is twofold nature. Primarily, he says, I sought to prove, or she says, I sought to prove with the facts before me, so such as those symbols engraved on the stone monuments of the distant past, that in the study of an archetype of a goddess of such a magnitude, I would discover an enduring feminine presence embracing culture over eons of time. Now, in a world where the study of the archetype of the goddess of Venus has been pushed aside as a representative of sexual pleasure and entertainment alone, the underlying importance of a female deity responsible for the resurrection and renewal of life has been understated. So it is not buried, if not buried in time. Very important, yes, very, for the female aspect of the goddess. So, okay, the feminine aspect of the goddess of Venus as a symbol of resurrection and a belief in the afterlife is an essential element of the human psyche. So therefore, the full potential and powerful influence of the goddess of Venus may be realized with the scope of this study, which attempts to bring her characteristics, images, and symbols to life. Thus, in itself, is worth providing the fact that in our consciousness, humanity needs this female symbol for renewal, both in cultural and in a spiritual sense. So yeah, we do. It's very important for the balance. It's very important. I love the balance. So now, second, she says, I would put forward the idea that this study was conducted as proof that we are indeed the sum total of our ancestors. As Joseph Campbell has stated in volume after volume of intensive study of the archetypes of all cultures, the need to identify with the past and continue a mythology of our culture is also an inherent need in the human psyche. In order to accomplish this tremendous end of war, we must study what we have been taught, or we have been to continue the process of the evolution of human thought. So at a time when several cultures have recognized the beginning of a cycle ripe for cultural change, which is logically based on the world around us and the cycles of precession in the night sky, that may very well communicate the need for change on some unconscious level. So, it is time to consider which myths are most abiding and which myths we have cast aside in the past that should be resurrected into a new vital mythology. Now, entering the archetype of a goddess, such as the one associated with the planet of Venus, is one necessary part of resurrecting those images of the feminine that have been misunderstood or omitted in the patriarchal cultures. Yeah, the patriarchal cultures, the patriarchal, yeah, sucks, that dominate the world today. Yeah, it does. That's ridiculous. So, however, the large task before us is to recreate an entire mythology based not only on the resurrection of the goddess of Venus, but of a revamping of human thought, conscious of the balance of life force itself, with respect not only of a feminine and masculine balance, but one which contains a balance with the forces of nature and the earth itself. So yes, it's very important for that balance to be there. God, goddess, good, evil, bad, negative, whatever, positive, negative. So yes, very, very, very important. To this end, we gather our thoughts around the ancient calendars of the Mesoamerican, the Greek, and the Celtic cultures that introduce us to the startling date of the winter solstice of 2012, which might be one of the largest cycles of precession measured by humanity. So whether this professional cycle is based on astronomy and or religious speculation, the fact remains that we have accumulated an amazing amount of energy and human thought to such an avenue for possible change. So it speaks of the need for change on a level of global consciousness never before presented to us as a species. Might we not pay someone or some attention to the need for incorporating change into our mythologies, which are expressions on the way we interpret and act on the world around us? So after having been involved in a decade of the study of the cycles of precession on ancient calendars, she goes on to say, I would hope that the presentation of the archetype of the goddess of Venus would be an inspiration for that change. For surely it is the accumulation of that study, the true balance of the observations of the celestial bodies that guide us through our own mythological life cycles are composed of three guiding forces, the sun, the moon, and Venus. So, very important to us, very important. Where to go? Okay, so it is this trinity of celestial bodies, observable to the naked eye for both the ancients and ourselves, that makes a calendar which keeps time for humanity, thus directing us in tune with the larger cycle of our lives. And it is the cycles of Venus that complete that calendar. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's really interesting about the whole, concept of that. It's really neat. So, alright, now, where'd I go? Oh, here we go. Okay, so the mythology of Venus, ancient calendars, and Archie astronomy is the third and final text in a series of studies that reveal the underlying myths of the cycles of precession. The first study, the myth of the year, returning to the origin of the Druid calendar, which is the University Press of America, 2003, demonstrates how the ancients based their myths on 4 seasonal groupings of constellations that follow the yearly cycles of the sun and the moon. Now, for the ancient Celts and the Greeks, that involved keeping time by the night sky as it followed the agricultural cycles of the earth. So the goddesses and gods of the earth, such as Demeter and Dionysus, lead the people through myths that keep humanity in tune with the movements of the celestial bodies. So the second study, the goddess of the bull, we went over that already. A study in Mycenaean Mythology, University Press of America, 2007. So, where to go? Focuses on the cycles of the moon beyond the year. So here, the 5, 19, 56, and other successive precessional cycles of the moon have been unearthed in the Bronze Age culture of the Minoan Mycenaean people, as well as the Celts, to form a body of religious ritual and belief, whose culture or central figure is the goddess and her consort, the bull. So the archetype forms the basis of the understanding, the concept of sacrifice, at the center of many mythologies that follow this ancient example. Finally, we have come to the cycles of Venus, which must be intertwined with the precessional cycles of the sun and the moon to form a trinity as the basis of many belief systems of ancient cultures. So, of course, yes, we have trinities in every culture. I mean, every single religion and every culture, Three is something, I don't know, of importance. So that's very true. Alright, so now Venus emerges as the goddess of resurrection and renewal, who gracefully moves through the celestial patterns, climbing the heights of the night sky as she rises from the sea in her own cycle that transgresses the yearly cycle, flowing in and out of the consciousness of both lunar and solar energy. I love this, especially with the whole Venus thing. It's just all starting to, with the V's, love you all to Venus and back. This is also finally making sense. So, clicks. Now, in the first chapter of the Mythology of Venus, entitled "The Emergence of the Goddess," which we did actually go through, she says here, I identify the archetype of the goddess of Venus in the Paleolithic cave art, sculpture, and ancient monuments in its earliest stages. Venus appears to be part of what Carl Gustav Jung and Eric Newman called the transformative character of the primordial archetype, where her image is seen as a regenerative force for change connected to the celestial order. Joseph Campbell and Maria Gimbutas also note the emergence of the transformative form of the archetype as a time-factored and identified with cyclical time in the cosmos, respectively. So, Lascaux Cave in Pierre Plates, which we've already went over, on the Lormaquer Peninsula in France, use symbols such as sacred water birds, reclining nudes, and the columns of life to delineate the patterns of the planet Venus in its cycle as morning and evening star. So the fluidity and beauty of these patterns in the night sky represent a feminine force for conception from the maternal waters, as well as the regenerative force of life itself. So, like the caves in France, such as Lascaux and Chauvet, the Neolithic mounds of Newgrange at the Bruna-Bien in Ireland, and the Neolithic temples such as Hagar and Hel in Malta, also embody the concept of Venus as a regeneratrix in both the construction of their sacred spaces and symbolic language carved on the temples. So the sacred waters, reclining nudes, triangle signs in the figure of a goddess climbing the world tree are dominant representations in the cycles of the Venus, reflected in the temple's orientation to the planet's journey in the night sky. Crazy, profound information. So the most intricate patterns of the cycle of Venus are seen in the notions of astronomy on the curbstones of Newgrange, carved by the ancient astronomers of Ireland. Very, very interesting. I mean, I love this. It's great. It is. So, alright, the cosmology of the sacred feminine, represented by the goddess of Venus, develops in the Minoan-Mycenaean culture of the Mediterranean, in what is later depicted as a goddess with arms raised in a posture of adoration of the heavens, which is represented in the Greek alphabet as Psi. So this goddess embodies the concept of spiritual enlightenment through awareness of the celestial, and as a model for transformation is identified with many of the same symbols of the renewal, such as sacred water, water birds, columns of life, or the world tree, and beautiful reclining nudes. A chorus, or a young male companion, is depicted in the frescoes and the sculpture of the Mycenaean culture as a companion that the goddess of Venus must retrieve from the underworld in her journey through the night sky. So lustral basins, pillar crypts, myrtle trees, doves, and other iconography of the goddess of Venus are seen in the expansive cult centers of Knossos and Mycenae, whatever, where the goddess's temples are aligned with the planet's cycles. Now, in a chapter entitled The Epiphany of the Goddess, ooh, I like that one. So she says, I identify these images as precursors to the figure of Aphrodite in Greek mythology. Now, an easy transference of the goddess of Venus as Aphrodite and her love as Adonis in Greek mythology follows with the explanation of the myths that trace the many faces of Aphrodite as morning and evening star. Her identification with the powers of creation, her birth from the sea, and her journey to eternally reunite with her lover corresponds with the cycles of the planet Venus. Now, likewise, Aphrodite's temple in Greece, such as those located on the Arconith and the Acropolis, are aligned to Venus's journey to the heavens. Sorry, guys. Okay, so many festivals on the Attic calendar, including Adonia, the Scaraphoria, and the Aphrodisia, recreate the myths of the goddess of Venus using rituals and symbolic art to enact the journey of the goddess and the planet. Really interesting. It's really interesting, especially, I mean, I just keep getting visions of all these different kinds of temples and stuff, and it's very similar to the ones in ancient Egypt. Now, Alright, so the cultural importance of the goddess of Venus is broadened by Miriam Robin Dexter's chapter that cites the images, myths, symbols, and art associated with the goddess in Indo-European cultures, in a chapter entitled Love Goddess of the Early Historic Age. Dexter identifies female figures associated with love goddesses in the Paleolithic and Neolithic eras, to include figures and other features, or those goddesses who protect the worshippers in the temple or cave, as well as figures associated with musical instruments, dance, and sacred displays of genitalia. Wow. Okay. Alright, so, where'd I go? I don't know where I went. According to Dexter, that's funny, the female body was considered sacred in propitious, and the nude dancer was thus able to effect the magic needed for the group as a shamanic voice figure. Indus Valley figures, as well as figures from Anatolia, are identified with the love goddess as Venus by water birds and snakes as a part of her iconography. So of symbols that represent the life continuum and the regeneration. So Dexter cites that early historic goddesses that repeat these iconographic features, such as Inanna in ancient Sumer, as Inanna and Ishtar among the Akkadians, and Babylonians. She is also the Queen of Heaven, the bestower of love and fertility, who searches the underworld. So, for her lover, an attribute clearly associated with the journey of Venus in the night sky. Alright, here comes Egypt. Now, in Egypt, one function of Hathor, exalted in poetry, music, and dance, is as love goddess. So, and a similar function is associated with Sri Lakshmi, born of the foam and at the churning ocean, Durga, and the Tara in the Hindu texts. Dexter concludes her study by identifying the roots and rituals of Aphrodite in the classical world, as well as the etymological roots of the planet Venus as a wanderer in search for her lover. Now, what becomes evident in the comparative mythology of Venus in several ancient cultures, is the recurring story of a goddess whose role is one involved with the patterns of the planet in the night sky. Anthony Murphy, in a chapter entitled Venus, the Chalichin something of Newgrange, Ireland, takes a look at this role in terms of the mythology and archaeastronomy and the Boyne Valley Mountains of Ireland, monuments of Ireland. So Murphy carefully outlined the overall purpose of the monuments in the Boyne Valley, which include the mounds of Newgrange, Douth, and Knowth, and their cultural and mythological significance. So the patterns of Venus are part of an ancient cultural myth that explains the winter solstice as a time of birth and rebirth. Now, the Calichin, or the virgin goddess of the Boyne, who is associated with a sacred white cow and white swans, rises once every 8 years before the sun as the morning star, so whose light fills the passage and chambers of the mound of Newgrange, followed by the light of the sun, which has the same effect. So this celestial phenomena is recounted in a series of myths about the Boyne, including the tale of Bone. So the Caliche goddess for whom the river Boyne was named, the tale of Diarmaid, whatever, and Grain, and the birth of their son, Eonhugas, who was born in one miraculous day. Oh wow. And the tale of Culain and his birth, stories of a miraculous virgin birth from the sacred mound associated with the goddess who gives birth, as well as the appearance of the last crescent moon beside the morning star, so represent the cycle of birth and rebirth, where the myth is part of the eternal repetition of the celestial bodies in the night sky. With the meeting of Venus, the sun, and finally the crescent moon occurs in these tales, the ancient calendar is complete. Ew, I wonder what happens when it's complete. What happens? This is very interesting. Very interesting. So, the mythology of Venus incorporates art, archaeology, and astronomy into a coherent form to elucidate, ooh, I like that, elucidate the phenomena of the journey of a planet in the night sky. As the brightest of the planets and the brightest object in the sky, except for the sun and the moon, Venus travels through the morning and evening, sometimes rising higher than the sun, and then descending, reaching its furthest place on either horizon. Now, for many cultures, from the beginning of time until the current era, Venus's journey has many meanings, most of which involve a divine being, a goddess, imparting the renewal and resurrection of the life forces through the belief in love. Venus is sometimes called the Queen of Heavens. The Queen of the Heavens is seen first after the sun sets, and then all her subjects, the stars, appears to decorate the night sky with immortal and divine light. Without this traveling celestial body, the regeneration of the cycles of the universe seem impossible and without cause. Surely it would seem to the ancients and to our modern eyes that we are subject to a motion that is not our own. That's a really interesting, that's a really, really interesting. I love this. I love, just this little bit of, this little bit gave us so much to go on, and that's good stuff. Venus is it's amazing, it's powerful. So, yeah, all about love. I love love, so I love Venus, obviously, everything, I've always wondered why I tell people I'm a hybrid from Venus. Maybe I am, probably not, so I need to come back down to Earth for a minute. But yeah, I do really honestly think, I don't know what I think right now, I feel like shit, but I had to come on, I had to get ready, I just had to get on here. So, and it's really sad that we lost somebody very special to us in the witch community. It's really, really weird. It's really weird. Didn't ever think for a second anything like that would happen. I don't know anything about it. So yes, Jeremy, I hope that you're around. I hope the afterlife is, I don't know. It's really weird. Sad, so, but alright guys, I love you all very much, and everybody have a great day, all the way, I love you guys, all the way, it's terrible, all the way from Venus, all the way back down, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. So, alright guys, be safe, stay healthy, please, and I love you guys very much.